Hi, I'm John Higgins and welcome to my channel. Continuing on with a video exploring some of the technology in this old 1963 Wurlitzer organ that is now been stripped down to become a virtual pipe organ. So I described the function of the electric motor and blower to provide wind to the reed boxes, and I described the valve amplifier, which we have here, complete with its acoustic compensation for treble and bass, and the bias between treble and bass can be adjusted as well. It's really quite remarkable for its time. As I said, the reeds are vibrating continuously, and when the keys are pressed on the manuals, it then basically takes the signal from the electrical pickup sensor, which is at the reed, and it then feeds that through into the valve amplifier, and that's part of how it gives such fast switching action that there is no delay or lag on hearing the sound. It isn't relying on the reed to physically start vibrating. For example, in a real pipe organ pipe, it relies on that reed physically moving and the transient effect to start sounding the note. Whereas with the way this organ's been designed, as soon as you press the key, you're immediately getting the precise tone and pitch. There's no transient. It's a very pure and clean sound. So the manuals that we have here are both 61 key manuals, and when you consider that they're almost 60 years old, they're really in remarkable condition. They've been looked after well. Quite a nice touch to play. Very, very heavy and solidly built. As you can see, they have quite a strong metal chassis and frame, and huge amount of wiring, which is all very heavy copper. And you can see down here that each one of the stop selectors, which I showed you here, correspond to a high voltage switch railing back here, and you can see that it's very, very difficult to see, but there's some fine wire contacts that move when the keys are pressed. You may just be able to pick them out right there. You can see those wires moving. So when the key is pressed, there is a whole complex mechanical mechanism in behind here, and you can see there's individual adjustments for every key, a very solid hinge mechanism which is secure and stable, and then behind a myriad of electrical wiring. It's really quite staggering. You can see all the different resistors. Look at all of these soldered joints, and you can see here the very fine wire contacts that will then touch these, I guess you'd call them bus bars. I don't know if my terminology is correct, but these wires here you can see are carrying the power, and when the key is depressed up here, you see this whole assembly of wires moves down, and that is basically providing power and switching to every single one of these very fine wires that come across here, and then these wires feed back into the stop switch selectors. So every single one of these stops corresponds to the switching wire, and depending on which selector switch you have activated depends on what sound is picked up. And each one of these stops will correlate to a different box of reeds. So the boxes, I believe, are distributed in octaves, and that's part of how it works. So there's a lot of borrowing of the stops, so even though it appears that there's quite a large number of stops, there's essentially only 3 different tones. There's a reed tone, a flute tone, and a hybrid diapason tone. And all of the different pitches are essentially borrowed, a little bit like an extension organ. So, for example, the 8 and the 4-foot flutes are extension, and even the 15th is an extension from that again. So once the signal has gone from the key being depressed into the amplifier, there is then a myriad of electronics which is beyond my knowledge and expertise. We have here a whole bunch of huge capacitors and resistors all in a circular band, which I believe is something to do with the signal filtering. And you can see there's more banks of wiring and electronics that comes out of the blower enclosure, and all of these heavy wiring looms that are full of copper wiring. There's more boxes of electronics here. All of the plugs. These plugs here are from the manuals that go into the valve amplifier that I've already showed you. Over here in this little trolley are all the transformers. So these are incredibly heavy. You can see the heat sinks, a huge big transformer here that weighs an absolute ton. And that's, I believe, the one of the transformers that's designed for Australian delivery. So it's 240 volts and 50 hertz, and that's then designed to feed the American system. Here, the secondary side is 110 volts. So that's how the conversion works. And over here we have all the fuses for the amplifier and the motor, and there's 2 different fuses, and these are what are called, I believe, the slow burn fuses, or slow blow as it's referred to, and that's designed to protect the circuitry from burning out. Over here we have what's left of the pedal mechanism, which is hard to imagine outside of the organ, but this whole assembly here is again very intelligently designed so that the pedal board is completely removable from this instrument. And if you can imagine, the pedal board assembly is designed to be detached from the console for transportation, and it's designed so that when you slide the pedal board back into position, it locks in position, and each one of the pedals sits just above these switches, so that as the pedal is depressed, all of the switch activation mechanism works, and that way it can be slid in and out without affecting anything. And the design of this switching is very similar to the manuals, so you can see very, very fine wires here which will move up and down as each pedal is depressed. And unfortunately, particularly on the pedals, all of this mechanism was failing quite rapidly. By the end, there was a significant number of notes that weren't working at all. And again, you can see the way this is built is quality. Everything is very solid, strongly designed, with felt padding to keep it all quiet, and quite a large wiring loom, as you can see. So there we have it, the 1963 Wurlitzer classic organ. And so this is going to be retired now, and I'm working on a plan to see if one of the local theatre organ societies may be interested in some of this as spare parts. This organ has been a fantastic part of my musical journey. It's basically at its end of life, or some of the components are at end of life, but for example this valve amplifier was rebuilt not that long ago and is still serviceable. So we'll see if the local theatre organ company may be interested in some of these things as spare parts, and I'll be very happy to donate them for a good cause, and it might help somebody. And the valve amplifier may be useful for spare parts, or for another customer for Resurrection Radio, which was the business that restored them, rebuilt it for me. And the final thing I'll show you is the speaker assembly, which is what finally brought all of this incredible mechanism and wiring into something that you could hear and enjoy. So you can see this is the original mesh lining that was on the front of the organ case down at pedal board level, and it's not a lot of room. I can't really lift any of these things at the moment with my back, but you can see the loudspeaker, 50 watts RMS loudspeaker for the bass, and down the bottom here we have the smaller loudspeaker for the treble. And again, considering their age and the technology, did quite an outstanding job. So there we have it, the console is now gutted and ready for the new technology and upgrade. Thank you very much for listening to this video. I apologise that I've rambled on a lot. I've found it fascinating. I hope you've enjoyed it too. It's certainly a bit of a moment of nostalgia. But now moving on to bigger and better things. Thank you so much for your support, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video when we'll start assembling my new virtual pipe organ. Take care. Bye.